Ever wonder why the Canadian maple leaf is so respected around the world? Or why world travelers sew a maple leaf on their backpack even when they've never even been to Canada? Some argue it's because we live in the greatest country on earth. What do you think? Did you know that this is the 250th anniversary of the birth of democracy in Canada? 250 years. How many people understand the history of sacrifice our armed forces have made to preserve our way of life? Their gift to us is democracy and the right to vote. So, why is it that 1.2 million Canadians under 25 didn't vote in the last federal election? Have we taken the right to vote for granted? Women have held the right to vote in Canada for less than 100 years. My great-grandmother didn't have the right to vote in Canada. Doesn't that just sound wrong? So what happened? Enough people demanded change and our politicians listened. How far have we come? We've had 3 female governors general, a female prime minister, women elected leaders of federal and provincial parties, and dozens of female members of parliament. Male or female, a life of politics is yours to choose. In this country, you can make a difference. Will you? No democracy is without its scars and blemishes. Yes, even a great nation like ours has some sore spots, including our treatment of Aboriginal peoples, our treatment of blacks, the expulsion of the Acadians. Canadians worked the Underground Railroad to free blacks from oppression and give them a new life. But did we treat them like all other Canadians? Well, Halifax has one of the top 4 highest populations of African Canadian citizens in Canada, but it took us until 1993 before we elected the first African Canadian MLA. How about our treatment of Aboriginal peoples? They were here before the Vikings, before John Cabot. Hard to argue they may have had the first democratic government long before my ancestors arrived, and yet they didn't get the vote until 1960. 1960! Let that sink in. How did these things change? Enough people raised a voice and forced change. That's what makes democracy great. That's the thing about Canada. People speak out and eventually we get it right. The president of Iran recently stated that Iran has no homosexuals. Wow. Would you be embarrassed if our prime minister made that same statement? The Iranian government denies the existence of homosexuality. Our Canadian government recognizes gay rights and civil union. Shoot, we have more than one openly gay member of parliament. I like that my country accepts people for who they are, not what they are. So, are basic rights in all democracies equal? Not so much. Take healthcare. Our American cousins pay dearly for healthcare that we take for granted. A heart attack in America without health insurance would mean financial ruin for most families. Not here in Canada. Universal healthcare may be what defines Canada abroad. Is our healthcare system perfect? Nope. But we need a good dose of perspective to make us appreciate it. Would you trade our healthcare for a lower rate of taxation? Or would you raise taxes and make our healthcare system even better? The reality is, no society is perfect and mistakes are made. The expulsion of the Acadians was one the British got wrong. Thankfully, today we have a thriving Acadian population that shares its history in Nova Scotia with a strong cultural identity. Bottom line, no democracy is safe, but our version is pretty solid. Here in Canada, if we have a close election, we end up with a minority government. In Kenya, a young democracy of less than 50 years, they have a close election, they end up on the verge of civil war and the lead story on every newscast. Everyone know who Sir John A. Macdonald is? Right, our first Prime Minister. If we could bring him back to the future, would he be proud of where we are? Would he be shocked that women, visible minorities, and Aboriginal people have the vote? Or would he be ecstatic that we got it right, like he knew we would? So, let's recap. We have no walls that separate us from our neighbors. No one is lobbing artillery shells or mustard gas at us. We have the rights to religious beliefs of our own choosing. Our little girls can go to school and grow up to be a firefighter or a fashion designer. We have a voice that can demand change, and all we have to do is vote. So why did 1.2 million Canadians under the age of 25 not vote in the last federal election? In this great country, you have the right to remain silent. I choose to speak. People all over the world would give anything, including their lives, for these basic rights and freedoms we have. So, how great is democracy?